All right, scholars, welcome on back on this Tuesday morning. That's a little Black Magic Woman by Santana from 1970 in honor of Edmund and his really dumb decision making. Let's jump on into Narnia here and see what's going to happen to the old boy. From the very onset of his meeting with the Queen, things do not go as Edmund had anticipated. We read the beginning of the chapter as follows. Edmund, meanwhile, had been having a most disappointing time. When the dwarf had gone to get the sledge ready, he expected that the witch would start being nice to him, as she had been at their last meeting. But she said nothing at all. And when at last Edmund plucked up his courage to say, "Please, your majesty, could I have some Turkish delight? You said," she answered, "Silence, fool!" Then she appeared to change her mind and said, as if to herself, "And yet it will not do to have the brat fainting on the way." And once more clapped her hands. Another dwarf disappeared. To make matters worse, the food that he receives is far from being his cherished Turkish delight. We read as follows. The dwarf went away and presently returned, bringing an iron bowl with some water in it, and an iron plate with a hunk of dry bread on it. He grinned in a repulsive manner as he set them down on the floor beside Edmund and said, "Turkish delight for the little prince. Ha 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 ha." "Take it away," said Edmund sulkily. "I don't want any bread." But the witch suddenly turned on him with such a terrible expression on her face that he apologized and began to nibble at the bread, though it was so stale he could hardly get it down. Margaram the wolf, the head of security, as it is sent to the beaver home and told to kill whatever he finds. Now, remember that Edmund knows his brother and sisters are at the beaver home, so here he is hearing the witch order their killing. Edmund is taken on a very long and cold ride, accompanied by the witch and her elf on the sledge. Edmund is very cold because he is not even wearing a coat. You'd think the witch would at least care enough about the dude to give him a coat. Then they come across a fox and some squirrels having a Christmas celebration. In her anger, the white witch turns them to stone. As they proceed further, the weather becomes warmer and the snow begins to melt. When they can finally go no further because the snow has melted, they proceed on foot. Edmund is treated like a slave and a prisoner. His hands are tied behind his back and he is forced to walk as fast as he can. That's why I showed you the video yesterday from the Clint Eastwood movie to give you an idea of how Edmund probably felt. Well, eventually, winter completely vanishes and spring is everywhere. But when the dwarf tells the witch that this is the doing of Aslan, she threatens to kill him and Edmund too. But let's throw out a few questions for thought on chapter 11. Feel free to stop the video and discuss it among yourselves if you have friends, siblings, or parents watching this with you. First, why do you think Edmund shouted out for the witch not to harm the animals, the ones that she turned to stone for celebrating Christmas? Why do you think the book says that his heart gave a great leap when he realized the frost was over? Have you ever personally faced a situation like Edmund's in which someone promised you a payment or a reward for a favor and then instead turned on you when you did it? Have you ever seen someone chase his or her greed like Edmund is doing and then end up in a bad situation as a result, as has happened to Edmund? Instead of moving forward into chapter 12 today, we are going to read a couple of literary passages on the subject of greed. Hopefully, this will help us get an even better understanding of Edmund's poor decisions before we do move forward. If we go to dictionary.com and look up greed, we would see this definition: excessive or rapacious desire, especially for wealth or possessions. Which leads us to the question, what in the heck does rapacious mean? I didn't know myself. Rapacious means that you are willing to lie, cheat, steal, do whatever else is needed to get what you want. So that would define greed. Then, if we go to thesaurus.com and look up greed, we would find a lengthy list of synonyms. And we have learned that synonyms are words which mean either the same thing or something very similar. We have a pretty lengthy list here. I want to pick out 3 in particular that best fit this situation. One is gluttony. That's when you are greedy for food. He's greedy for Turkish delight. One is selfishness. He's only thinking of himself. One is covetousness. That's when you want something that someone else has. Those are the 3 that seem to best fit Edmund's situation on a 6th grade level. Today we're going to look at 2 authors and read pieces of their works that go along with the subject of greed. The first is Geoffrey Chaucer, who was a famous English poet and writer in the 1300s. He is sometimes referred to as the father of English literature. Chaucer was also a philosopher, astronomer, and an active politician. One of his most famous books was entitled The Canterbury Tales. And in the Canterbury Tales, a group of travelers is involved in a storytelling contest as they make their journey. But each story has a life lesson. We're going to read just one of the Canterbury Tales, which is called The Pardoner's Tale. The pardoner at that time was someone who could pardon or forgive their sins, so they believed. He was kind of like a priest or minister. This pardoner, as it turned out, was not a very honest priest or minister. In fact, he was greedy, and he told a story about greed. Let's also look at Ben Franklin today. Ben Franklin was one of our nation's founding fathers, but politics was actually only one of his many ventures. He was also a writer, scientist, inventor, postmaster, and printer. You've probably heard the story of him flying a kite in a lightning storm. He invented the lightning rod, bifocals, the Franklin stove, the rocking chair, and many other things. In 1733, he began to publish something called Poor Richard's Almanac, which was kind of like a magazine. It contained a number of wise and witty sayings in each publication, and he's still famous for those sayings today. So we're going to read a list of his wise sayings on the topic of greed. So these are the next steps today. Basically, you'll follow the chain of videos and articles posted on the website. So watch the 2 short videos which follow this one. One will help you to better understand The Pardoner's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer. The other will help you to better understand the sayings of Ben Franklin on greed. Then read the 2 short articles, which are linked below the videos. They're in one PDF document. Your daily challenge is this. After reading and watching the videos, do an internet search and find someone in history who pursued greed and then turned out badly because of it. Tell this person's story in 1 to 2 proper and complete sentences and email your answer to gekelley@jmcss.org. And as usual, all the good replies will go on the shout out wall. Scholars, I'm proud of you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Keep up the great work. And don't forget our essay contest. I want to see a lot of you compete. See you soon.